Hey, folks. So, welcome to our final workshop of the day. So, a conversation with Hofstra alumnus and Hollywood filmmaker Kieran Valla, who did a feature film called Delinquent, as well as several other projects he's working on. So, please welcome director Kieran Valla.
Hey everyone.
Kieran, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Bill?
Good. I really like the Hollywood look that you got going there. The 5 o'clock shadow, the all those things. I
It's
think
a
that
requirement. It's a requirement here, actually, all of this. Yeah.
so that's awesome. That's awesome. So, Kieran, what year did you graduate again?
2006.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
2000.
it's a good look. Still looks like it just a few years ago. And
Yeah.
you did a feature film called Delinquent in 2016, which won a few awards, including Brooklyn. What were some of the film festivals the film was in?
Yeah, so we won the grand jury prize at the Brooklyn Film Festival. We played at Austin Film Festival. We won the Stubbornly Independent award at the Tallgrass Film Festival in Wichita. And we played overseas at a few festivals. We played at the Kitzbühel Film Festival in Austria, as well as we played at I think 15 festivals overall.
Wow, that's an awesome thing. So this film, I'm wondering if I should try to do it, a brief synopsis, or give it to you. You've probably done it more times than me. So tell us what the film is about.
So yeah, Delinquent is about centers around Joey, who's a high school senior, who's a bit of a troublemaker and a rapscallion, and he has a father and his father's friends, including his uncle Britt, who are small-time criminals around town. And Joey idolizes them and wants to be like them in many ways. But he's also, a sensitive kid. He's taking care of his younger siblings and has a lot of responsibilities on his plate for a kid his age. And basically, the film takes off when they go out on a job to steal coins from a local antique shop, and the owner ends up being there. And more or less, I'll say it's a job gone wrong, and a tragedy befalls them. And then the rest of the film is basically Joey grappling with this tragedy, the moral implications in terms of who he is as a person and who he wants to be as a man, and kind of forming his own identity and sort of what's the right thing to do in this situation.
So when I saw the film the first time, I was always a little bit surprised, because I think there's really a gritty sort of hard edge, as one of the characters refers to it, as sort of white trash, petty crime element to it. And I never thought of you as having necessarily those qualities, although maybe you just hide it really well. But so I'm wondering how you come to this material. And also you worked with a collaborator, at least on the script, Levi Smock. So tell us about how you came to the material.
So Delinquent takes place in Connecticut, in a rural area of Connecticut where I actually grew up. And some of the material is based around both experiences that Levi and I had. Growing up, my dad was a small business owner. I grew up on a farm. He had a wholesale plant nursery. And we actually were robbed several times. I actually came home in the middle of a robbery. And at one point, a kid who I actually went to school with, his family, actually we know we're one of the people that robbed my father, and we were friends, and we knew his family, and it was quite an awkward situation. So kind of the small time crime elements, I wasn't necessarily directly involved with them, nor was my family, but I had friends who were, and was directly associated in various ways. And for Levi on the other hand, he was a delinquent. And that's where he kind of definitely brought his own experiences to the project. He grew up, not having a home for a while, sleeping on couches. Came up from a really rough familial situation, and when he was 16, he was stealing car radios, stealing cars, doing a lot of things. And he actually went to the Navy because he knew he was on a really, really bad path. And he knew that was the only way he was going to kind of like turn his life around. If he got out of, he's from rural Missouri, and he knew he just had to get out of there and kind of make a change in his life. So he brought a lot of like real world experience kind of in relation to the character of Joey.
Wow, that's really interesting. I definitely want to pick up on that, because I think there's a lot of things that are really sort of applicable to the moment. But first, tell me about the process of getting a film made, because a lot of our the viewers are aspiring filmmakers themselves, and or will be curious about the process of going about getting this project made, including you had your producers. Alvaro, and you have also a producer who's your cinematographer, Daniel Mark. So tell me about that process. Like, how did you get this thing made?
So I think the first thing you always need to do is start out with a really good script or a really good idea that inspires people. And when Levi and I came up with this idea, we were, trying to find out like, what is this first feature that we want to make? And when we came up with this concept, this world, this environment, we were like, okay, this is it. And, we also knew we wanted to go. And I when I built the script, we built it around going to Connecticut, where I grew up, and taking home field advantage just in terms of, resources, people that also you're just so much more connected to the material. It's something that that makes it special, that nobody else knows how to do. And I think that's a really important aspect of it too, just in terms of, you have to live with whatever you're doing for 3, 4, sometimes 5 years when you're making a feature film. So you better love it, and it better be, really special to you and a part of you. So I think the first thing is just to have an idea that inspires people and that gets people on board. And that's what Levi and I were able to do with the script. We got Dan on board, and then we got Alvaro on board. And after that, what it's really about is, finding the money for it. That's the next major challenge. And luckily we did have 4 producers on board, and that was the idea for all of us. And we just did a lot of grassroots fundraising. And it was a mix between, crew from like Hofstra and AFI, and people just working on low budget, and a lot of home field advantage stuff. Like 95% of locations were free. We got great deals, just really using all the resources that we had at hand to put this thing together and to bring it to life. And there's no like one way to do it, but it's just making that decision that you're going to do it, and just despite all odds, just continuing to press forward, because there's going to be a lot of setbacks. There's going to be a lot of things that deter you from doing it along the way, but that's why you have to love it, because you have to really believe in it enough to keep pushing it forward.
Right. So some of the actors, like the lead, Alex Schaefer, seems like he hadn't done a lot of work before, but certainly Bill Sage was like an icon of indie low budget filmmaking. How did you come to settle on him, and was it difficult getting actors attracted to it?
Yeah. So in terms of Bill, he was someone we were thinking about for a little while. And, cause like, he was in, I think it was called We Are What We Are, which played at Sundance, this horror film right before what I had just seen. And Mysterious Skin I had seen back when, I was in college. I always loved him in that, and in a lot of the other independent films. So he was someone that was on my radar, and our cinematographer Dan actually worked with him very briefly, like years and years before. So he was someone who was on our radar. But initially, for that role of Rich, for the father role, we were aiming for actors with a little bit more name value, just in terms of, thinking ahead of like festivals, distribution, things of that nature. But the names that were kind of coming to us were people that I didn't feel like were great actors. Yeah, they might have added a little more value in terms of distribution or a name on a poster. But what our goal is just to find the best actors for the roles. And ultimately, we were like, let's go after Bill. And he really responded to the material, and he was willing to do this for a discount for us and come on board. And not only, is he a great actor, he was also a great leader on set. Like, in all honesty, he's so experienced and so smart, and he kind of led all the other actors in this really great way. And even in scenes, he was like, hey, a couple scenes, he's like, do you mind this speech? Like, can I maybe rewrite this a little bit. Can I do this? And it's like, yeah, go ahead, Bill. And he literally like rewrote a few scenes in the moment, and it was, you know, being open to that from us, like to give us credit, to be open to that, to not be precious about the material and let great people do what you brought them to do, which is to elevate your material, is, you know, something that's important to be open to when you have someone of his caliber on set with you.
Yeah, this sort of brings me to this idea of what directing really is, and sort of perhaps disabusing some of our viewers as to what directing is. I think some of them think it's like casting a spell on your actors, of being the big boss and telling everyone what to do. What skill set do you feel that really helps you sort of navigate, particularly this film and being a director in general?
I think finding people that are smarter than you and better than you, and convincing them to be involved in what you're doing, and then just like giving them the opportunity to shine, but then also making sure that what they're doing is, you know, is in line with the tone and the overall vision and stuff like that. But I think being open to collaboration and letting great people, just really, it's like casting is everything. When they say casting, it's not just casting actors, it's casting everybody that's going to be involved in your production, and just finding the right people. And if you do that, and you have a, you know, a good script, and you have a vision for it, and you've relayed that vision, and you let great people do what they do, and, you know, like, and then also you can be open to inspiration in the moment. You can be open to taking something in a different direction on set. Like, you have to really, really prepare what you want to do, but then be open to inspiration and change in the moment. And I think that's, if you can do that, then I think, you know, that's kind of the best case scenario.
So certainly this film has a point of view that's very unique about, there's a subtle, delicate family relationship and interpersonal relationships. So David, if we could go to the first clip with them at the dinner table, and show that could be a jumping off to some other conversation.
Wake up. Wake up. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Don't be shy with the plane. Get the plane. All right. Hit it. Put it right in here. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. The whole truck. The whole truck. Just bring the whole truck. That's it. Let's nice on the. Hit it. That's it. Right down there. How those coming along, Joey?
They're good.
Let's get them steaks in here. Dinner time.
We never eat this.
It's good, isn't it?
I don't like it.
You haven't tried it yet, have you? Well, maybe it's a piece smart.
She said she didn't like it.
Yeah, I heard her. Maybe this piece needs a place to come and park. Remember this?
Chris, you don't have to eat it if you don't want to.
What do you think of it now? Pretty good, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's better when it comes in for a landing. What do you think of yours, Blake?
Bloody good.
Bloody good. Well, maybe you need some more blood on it. Some more blood on that. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Can we afford this?
What's life if you don't treat yourself once in a while? Right? You liking that more, I'm noticing that. All right. All right, that's enough. All right. Okay, that's enough. enough. Try to do something nice. You act like a bunch of brats.
You know, this was a really great meal that you cooked.
Oh, I did, huh? I'd like to applaud the lady of the house for cooking such a great meal.
Putting on an apron, going out there in the cold.
Come on.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Family time. We should do this more often.
Well, so I like that scene. Really, thank you for providing it. It does get provide a jumping off into, Joey's coming of age, like who he's going to decide to be as a person. And his father and his cousins are all part of a sort of petty crime crew, and where machismo becomes very, very important. And it seems like Joey, on one hand, is enamored of them, like wanting to be one of them, but at the same time, wanting to sort of be another person, a sensitive person who takes care of his sisters, and here is ridiculed for being feminine by his father. And so I was wondering, when you were thinking about this, either consciously or maybe you weren't aware but subconscious, did these issues of male identity come to the forefront as you were writing the script? Do you think it was subconscious or unconscious process, and was it a source of discussion between you and Levi? Or I'm just wondering about that.
I mean, I think it's something that I think it's a very that's like the really personal aspect to me, and that's a great question, and I think the answer to that is it came to me as I was working on it. I think it was subconscious when I started. I wasn't actively thinking about that, and then as I was building the film, I just noticed more and more what this is about. It's about this kid embracing the feminine and being okay with that, and kind of moving away from toxic masculinity. And I think for me, that's personally, that is a journey I took, because I did, even though I didn't grow up in a crime family, I did grow up in a very, masculine kind of this toxic environment in many ways growing up, and in many aspects of my life. And I think, so that in that way, it was a really personal story to me. But that was like kind of a revelation that I had as I was building it, and just kind of leaned into that more as we move forward with the film.
Yeah, it's very interesting because this character, Joey, on one hand is, hyper masculine. So, for example, one of the opening scenes, he gets into this fist fight with this much bigger kind of jock guy, and totally beats him down and breaks his nose, perhaps. And he goes into the assistant principal's office, and the assistant principal says to him in that scene, she says, "Joey, you are so effing cool." And at that moment, Joey smiles cockily, like he's getting a compliment. Well, thank you very much. I am. And she says, then she continues, she says, "Really? Is this who you want to be?" And that way I felt that scene, which occurs very early on in the story, feels like it's kind of a jumping off point. And also because Joey has a girlfriend, and in that scene he says, "Oh, he's upset because he caught me sticking my tongue down his girlfriend's throat." So there is this kind of aggressive, sexually confident, masculinity on the one hand, but on the other hand, not to the point of his father, whose mother's no longer there, and his siblings who are without regular relationships as well. And so I was wondering about that sort of dividing line, as you said, between toxic masculinity and sort of having confidence in yourself as who you are as an adult.
Yeah, so I think he's not like one thing, and I think for Joey, like that's what he's been taught, and that's kind of like the language that he knows, and that is like where I think a lot of his self-confidence is derived from, is his ability to, you know, to fight and his ability to do these things. And I think there's this level of immaturity that's like centered around that too, where I don't think he's at this place in his life where he's fully, you know, aware of his own behavior and his own toxicity in certain ways, and there is like a level of enjoyment that comes around from it. And I think though these other parts of his personality, as he grows up and he gets older, I think this is just the beginning of that shift for him towards becoming, you know, a different person and embracing the feminine in that way. And I think the first kind of step in that process is to separate himself from the aspects of his life, from this, you know, a non-role model in his life, or possibly the worst type of role model that you could potentially have.
Right. So there's also this sort of class divide, which is kind of illustrated by his relationship with his former best friend, Brendan, played by Sam Dillon. So this character, Brendan, he's kind of skinny. He runs cross country, which, as we know, is the least aggressively masculine of the East Coast sports compared to, like, say, football and lacrosse or something like that. But he's also a little bit upper crusty. He can't fight. And their friendship kind of dissolved. And part of this story revolves around his obligation to the friend who kind of epitomizes the kind of person he wishes that he were, and who he is. And I want to go, David Henning, if we could sort of pull up that clip about between them. I think that could be a really illustrative of some of the other things that are in the film.
Joey, what are you doing here? Are you?
Is Brennan home?
Yeah, but are you okay? What's going on?
Hey, Mom. It's okay, you can come up.
Hey. Brennan.
Look, man. I'm really sorry, okay? Leaving you back there was a dick move. I didn't mean anything I said about you or your family either. We were best friends, man.
I was there.
What?
When your dad was killed, I was there. I was supposed to be lookout, but I missed a car in the back. It was for points, no harm. With the insurance, you know? But then your dad got out of the car, and he was drunk. He came after me, and that brick came out.
Was he scared? Was my dad scared?
Yeah. Yeah, he was scared.
So, wow, what a fantastic scene. The acting there was awesome. Awesome. That must have been something to direct. So, without giving too much away, Brendan does not really know what fully would happen to his father. And Joey makes a decision to side with Brendan over his own family, which is a very optimistic thing. And so I asked you, I think you already decided which side of the equation you come on. Are we really able to escape our tribes? Seems to be a very loaded question at this particular moment here. Given what has recently transpired in our capital, tribe, and choose our families. Are we able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the ability to. I don't think I'm optimistic to the point where I think it's common, or I think it's always necessarily permanent. I think we've seen one moment in this kid's life where he has escaped his tribe, but what the fallout of that will be for him, psychologically, emotionally, and stuff like that, I think, could be it's going to be really difficult for him. So although I think it's imbued with optimism in terms of him being able to kind of escape his tribe and kind of escape this destiny, that this path that he's been sent on, I think it's going to be a really difficult journey forward, because I don't think that it doesn't come without consequences in order to do so. And so yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's a pretty that is quite a loaded question, but overall I think my answer is yes, but I am very aware, that it's not easy, and I think it depends how entrenched you are in whatever ideology or philosophy of your tribe, or where you're standing in it. Because I think you see examples of people in the real world, like whatever sort of example you want to apply it to, like where I think some people sort of like naturally are at this place. Like I think when we meet Joey, he's already at this place where he's kind of on this line. He does want to be a part of this thing with his father, but he also is taking care of the kids. Like, so I think he does have this other side of himself where he is ready to potentially do that and make that change. And this is kind of the thing that allows him to do that, even though it's a quite tragic way for that to happen.
Right. Before I ask the next question, I just want to tell our viewers that we're going to open it up for your questions in a moment. So please get them together and put them into the chat, and David will feed them to us as we continue on. So one of the things I noticed also is the cinematography in this film. A couple of things I noticed was the sort of the soft, diffuse lighting that's pretty much throughout. It seems like all the skies are pretty much overcast. I don't know how that's possible unless it was just luck of the draw. And even the lighting inside seems to be fairly soft, even when it's high key. Did you guys have a conversation about the cinematography, specifically how it related to the story?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of the look of the skies, and that is really seasonal. That was kind of the time when we wanted to shoot, was in December in Connecticut, where primarily you're going to have overcast light for most of the time. And originally we wanted to actually try and do a seasonal change where we were starting more right at the end of fall and kind of leading into winter as a progression for the film, but we just didn't have financing and the resources available to do that in time. So we kind of just decided to stick, with this one look in December, which kind of worked for us. And we shot some like B-roll and other footage earlier on so we could still kind of build a little bit more of a transition, because we actually were prepping for a month in November. So we were able to get a little bit of that just through shooting some stuff ahead of time. And yeah, in terms of overall the feel and the look of the film, we definitely, wanted to kind of build a visual progression that kind of aligned with Joey's like psychology and his point of view. And I think by the end of the film, there's a little bit like less handheld. It's a little bit less chaotic. We wanted more chaotic handheld feel earlier on, and as the film progresses, we wanted to kind of sit in moments, sit in stillness, as Joey is kind of weighing the decisions in his life.
Wow, that's sort of cool. And also, there's a kind of a desaturation. Was that something that occurred in post, or something that was in plans from the beginning?
That was something that was planned. That was something that was planned from the beginning. We wanted to take, we wanted it to feel a little desaturated, to lean into the look, because we call it like, it's kind of Yankee Gothic is what we refer to the genre as.
Okay, Yankee Gothic. So in the chat, Seer Druid asks, as a YouTuber, I find it hard to usually come up with an idea for a story. What is harder, coming up with the script or filming the movie?
I would say for me, the script. I mean, I think that's a very personal thing, because I think it just depends upon your personality. And I'm a person who likes to be in the moment. I come from a theater background, and an acting background originally. So being on set and being in production and being that environment, the momentum, the amount of people, the level of focus where you have to make decisions in the moment. I'm a very instinctual person. So I love that energy and that flow. When you're writing a script and you're making those decisions on page and every story point, for me, that process psychologically, I can get really held back by that. So I find the crafting the story more challenging for me. And then being on set, even though it's very physically demanding, just the momentum and the kind of adrenaline that I get from it, it's always enjoyable, even if incredibly stressful. So,
right, which brings me to think of a larger question, and that is: so you're out in Hollywood trying to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You got your hustle on. What skill set, or some of the, because a lot of these people are, as I said previously, are aspiring filmmakers themselves. So what skill set seems to be you calling on a lot right now in terms of trying to make your career as a director?
Yeah, I think the main skill set you have to have is, I think, just continuing to want to like grow and get better, because like that's the thing. I think a lot of people look at this stuff and is like, you either have it or you don't have it, or it's just like your talent is going to take you wherever. And like, yeah, you need a level of natural talent, and you need that going into anything. But really what it is you can get good at this. It's a craft. You can continue to grow. You can continue to learn. Every project that you do, you can learn from your mistakes. And for me, I think if you just continue to have that mindset, if you continue to learn from the people around you, if you continue to be open to that, I think that's the thing that's benefited me the most, is that I just feel like I continue to grow, and I continue to like build my skills off learning from all of the people around me and all the projects, and especially from my mistakes.
Well, cool. David has a question from Bobby B. Have you ever had any films that were very influential or aspiring for you? What movies affected you the most as a filmmaker?
Yeah, so I think, there's a couple movies specifically. So I wanted to act until I was maybe around 16, 17. That's the side of it that I was on. And then I became familiar with the works of Billy Wilder and Alfred Hitchcock. Those were like the first two directors. I think Strangers on a Train was one movie that really inspired me. And Billy Wilder's The Apartment is probably the movie that made me want to be a director, because I think The Apartment specifically, there's just so many choices in that movie that he makes that really connected with me, and his tonal balance between drama and comedy and how he's able to take these really like dark themes but butt it up against comedy. For me, that's where I saw the marriage of those two elements. It really inspired me. And there was other movies at that time when I was coming up, like Aronofsky's Pi had just come out around that time, and Christopher Nolan's The Following, Memento. Kind of like these younger who I saw were just going out and making these films for nothing, and these films that got really, these almost experimental films that got really deep into the psychologies. I mean, The Following is very much a Hitchcock nod from Nolan as well, so that kind of fell in line with what I was really into at that time. But yeah, those were some of the first movies that inspired me.
Right. So, are there any of your current endeavors that you're able to talk about? I know, first of all, you don't want to jinx anything by putting it out in the air, and some things you don't want to talk about. But can you talk about the types of things that you're pursuing now?
Yeah, so I'm working on some TV stuff and on some film stuff. On the TV side, I'm been working on an animated show for FX for the last few years. We just finished completion of our pilot, and we're actually this weekend test audiences are watching it, and we wrote 2 backup scripts for them. So we'll find out in the next month or two whether we're on air or not, actually, whether we're going to series. So that's pretty exciting because that's been a long endeavor with them. And then on the TV side, I'm also writing a pilot for Hulu right now, this show called Fruit Man, centered around this comedian, musician, Daniel Koren, who's from Israel. And it's about a guy who's really stuck in his life, who finds the tree of knowledge growing in his backyard in Brooklyn, and he uses the power of the fruit to try and change his life.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Sounds wonderful. Very high concept. So it sounds like even though we're in the COVID zombie apocalypse, it does sound like there's still some movement going on in Hollywood. How are things been recently since COVID?
It was really challenging for people at first. I was fortunate because I was working on this animated show, and we also were pitching this Fruit Man show, and we sold it like right in the beginning of the lockdown here. So with animation, you can do everything from home, so there was no bumps. We just kept working right through. So we were fortunate in that regard. But there was a period here that was rough, and development stuff is still a little bit rough here because there was a period when there was no productions going on at all, and that was hard for everyone. And then there were so many people at home, so many writers and stuff. There was a lot of stuff bought in the beginning in development, and now no one's really buying too much stuff right now. But I think that'll change as more and more productions go. So there's been some challenges for people, and there's been a slowdown here, but I mean, here's the thing: people are always gonna want to watch stuff. We're watching more stuff than ever over this last year, so I think the little bumps in the road here haven't been that massive or that devastating. I think some of my friends and some people were struggling for a while, but as I'm hearing, a lot of people are starting to get back to work now. So,
well, that's good because I've watched everything. Everything. I'm down to foreign language kung fu films and Netflix. That's the only thing out of the Hulu Prime, some Prime. That's the only thing I haven't watched. So definitely,
you gotta get the Criterion. Do you have the Criterion Channel app?
I do. I have to come back to old school. Here's the thing: when it comes late at night, I don't want to watch anything serious. I want to watch something that if I fall asleep on, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I made that mistake last night. I watched and Hui's Boat People. Have you seen that from '82?
No.
It's a wonder. I thought it was a wonderful film, but yeah, it's heavy. It was really heavy.
Yeah, and I definitely don't want something that's going to make me like under COVID times make me depressed. I have a very narrow margin right now. So I definitely, and nothing about diseases, epidemics, zombies. Nothing along those lines. What is inspiring you right now, or if anything?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I get inspired by a lot of stuff, but lately, like the Criterion Lab and I have been really good friends. I've been the past few weeks. I've been really into the Black Western genre. I watched this documentary, Black Rodeo, from '76, which features like Muhammad Ali's in it, which was really interesting. I don't know if you know about that, Bill.
Yeah,
I
I
know
do.
you lived in Harlem for a while, where they brought the rodeo to and that was really awesome. And so I've been really deep. I've been really deep into that. I've been on a, I've watched. I'm kind of revisiting Cassavetes lately, which is not necessarily my style, but I do come from like a. I've also been watching a lot of like Mike Lee films too, like because I come from the improv world. I mean, that's sort of the world that I come from. And even though I don't really make films like that, I feel like there's a lot to learn from those directors, and I just love watching that sort of filmmaking. I just watched The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, Cassavetes film,
Yeah.
and I accidentally watched the original, which is like 40 minutes longer, and I was like, oh, this is kind of. And then I was like, oh man, I didn't, because I don't know if you know the story behind that, but basically, like, it was released in I think '76, and people hated it. So he went and he cut 40 minutes out and then re-released it. So I watched the original, and then after I went back and watched the shorter version, I was like, oh yeah, the shorter version makes a lot more sense, and it's better.
Just about every single case where there's a conflict between the original director's 3-hour cut and the producer's 2-hour cut, I just about always like the producer's 2-hour cut better. And it makes me feel so terrible. I feel like such a Philistine that I prefer the director's 3-hour cut.
Well, I liked his cut, but there were certain things where I was like there were certain like logic things where I was like, wait, why is this character like so savvy at fighting? And then like in the recut version, there's a piece of exposition they put in about his history as a war hero, and I'm like, oh well, now this makes sense, like why he was so savvy. Like, but in the director's cut, it wasn't even in there, and there were certain things like that where I was like, but I guess the editing process was rushed, so I don't. That's what Cassavetes said. But
have you noticed a change in style between current filmmaking and these older films by older filmmakers, and like you would find in the Criterion Collection, like a Mike Lee or a Cassavetes? It seems like perhaps we have more shorthands now. We're a little bit more used to abbreviations like NP, no problem.
yeah.
Have you noticed a difference in the styles between now and then?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think what you're seeing now is like, I mean, it's interesting because everything builds off of everything else. So I think you're seeing. I mean, I think what you're seeing is like you see like the origins of some stuff now. Like if you're looking at like Cassavetes, you look at somebody like, or Mike Lee, you look at someone like a modern filmmaker like Drake Doremus, who did like Crazy and films like that, who's working in a very improvisational way. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitive differences just in terms of, I feel like stuff now is like everything feels a bit more structured, and especially with TV, it feels like film is bleeding into TV and TV is bleeding into film. Whereas I think if you're looking at older films, it felt like it's a medium that really stood alone, and there's certain like imperfections in the craftsmanship and the creation of it that is almost enjoyable, where everything now feels like technically like polished, and it feels like everybody can kind of do the technical craft side of it, but I think you lose some of that, like that wild feeling that you have in some of those older films. And it's almost like film, like there's something organic, there's something structural there that just feels so real and tangible that I don't know, that I feel like not entirely lacking now. I mean, there's so many great films, I watched all of Chloe Zhao's films. Obviously Nomadland it has been really big, but I don't know if you watched a movie before that, The Rider, which is a rodeo. I've been really into rodeo stuff lately, which is about a rodeo rider, and it's all non-actors in it, and it's a beautiful film, and that really felt like that movie like harkens back to older films of the 60s and 70s. It just has such a vibrant independent spirit to it.
Right. So we only have a few more minutes before we have a good question. David, you want to put it up? This is from Peppa Shrek. It is said that there are only 6 stories, and that's all that's ever been done before. What do you do to keep it fresh? Is there anything that you do to keep it original?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think there's like some truth in that, although that's like a broad like generalization. I think really to keep it fresh and to keep it original, it's just like what story is important to you? What is the story that you can tell that no one else can tell, and how can you tell it? And if it matters to you and it has meaning to you and you believe in it, and then that's all that matters. I mean, okay, even if you go and you do something that's been done before, more or less, how are you going to do it differently? How are you going to contextualize it in your own way? And even if you don't like make it as original as you want or whatever, learn from that and go and make the next one. It doesn't matter. We just have to keep. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just follow your instincts, do what you love, and make art. That's it. That's it.
Right. That's great. I like that ending on that word contextualize, because I think that's a great word, which just means that it's like, how many times has Romeo and Juliet been told, right?
Yeah.
And every one of those versions that we've seen of Romeo and Juliet feels a little bit different.
Yeah.
From the Baz Luhrmann to the Zeffirelli to they all feel a little bit different. And certainly Hollywood definitely feels like it's in a remake mode. Like they're remaking even Spider-Man. And I'm like, didn't they just make a Spider-Man with a different actor last year at Origin Stories? But they seem to, it seems to be keep on making it. So,
Yes.
So, unless there's any other questions, David, we're going to get ready to wrap it up. I think this has been a fantastic thing for you coming. Thanks for coming.
Of course.
Another graduate of the Hofstra film program. We're going to claim him, although AFI is going to try to claim him, but fudge AFI. we birthed them here.
Exactly. I was born in Dempster. I was born in Dempster, like the orcs, in Lord of the Rings.
So let me ask you one other personal question before we go.
Yes.
So East Coast, West Coast. I lived out in the West Coast. I'm glad I came back to the East Coast. Are you longing for home, or like, holy Jesus, the sun and the warmth and the sunshine have just totally swept you up?
I think I'll always like want some connection to the West Coast. I do love the West Coast. Maybe not even like LA specifically, I think. But there is something I love about the West Coast. But I would love to, do the dream of like splitting time. That's why the Hulu show that we're writing is based in Brooklyn, because I'm like, like try and go back there for part of the year and kind of split the difference or whatever. I don't know. I love them. I love them both. Like the East Coast will always be my home. I'll always have an East Coast mentality, I think, and point of view. But yeah, it's, at least for now, it's kind of, depending on what type of environmental disasters we face over the next, 5 to 10 years here. LA is like a fairly easy place to live. The weather is really consistent. I never have to shovel, like, because I grew up on like a farm, a pretty big property with a giant steep driveway, and we had to shovel a half mile of snow all the time. So I don't miss that. There's just some things like that. Anyway, I'm babbling. It's a tough. You've gotten deep. You got deep into my psyche.
We had a lot of snow this year. It felt like a throwback to the old days. I lived in LA, and it was hard for me to want to get work done, because every day I would wake up and I go, holy Jesus, this is a perfect day. I'm going to write later on. First, let me go and play a little basketball. Then we're going to play a little basketball against, it's such a beautiful day. First, I'm going to go sit outside at the coffee bean and have myself some iced latte. Then I'm going to write.
That is incredibly true. It is really difficult in that way. Like whereas like on the East Coast, you're like, oh, it's raining out. I can't go outside anyway, and you can kind of like stare out the window, look at the rain, and it just feels. Or if you're snowed in, like yeah, like no, it is true on a work basis like that. Like I do feel like when I visit the East Coast or I go places, you know, sometimes my wife travels for work, and if I don't have to be here, if I'm just writing, she'll go to Chicago. I'll like, even in the winter, I'm like, I'll go because I know like I just work better in other environments than I do here. So where there's more seasons and weather, it's too pretty.
That East Coast neuroses and anxiety, buddy, if you want to be a writer. Kieran, what a pleasant conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, and for all of you who are viewing. We're almost at the end of Youth Film Day. We're going to, at 4:10, there's a Hofstra Zoom link where you can see the festival screenings, I believe. Or is that the proper link, David? Am I correct? Oh, it's a Vimeo link, I think. David. So anyway, thank you guys, and I will
Thanks everyone.
see you later on. Kieran, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Bill. Have a good